1 Introduction. RFK. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the eco-design wood stove, and international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RFK. Purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to residents against wood smoke emission particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents against wood smoke emission particulates, or RFK, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this RFK podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, residents against wood smoke emission particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025, and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives, and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Web 57DHYAFZZFLWEO, April 29, 2026, 5 Common RFK Junior Fallacies. In this webisode, 1 RFK Jr. is holding back $600 million, 2, 5 more common RFK Jr. fallacies, 3 Washington, D.C., 4 New York City, 5 the Midwest, 6 Ukraine. Main content. 1 United States Health Secretary RFK Jr. is holding up $600 million appropriated by Congress for vaccines in poor countries, arguing that children are receiving outdated shots with ingredients that the U.S. has already phased out. Politico, April 29, 2026, with an excerpt reported in the MedPage newsletter. 2 United States, 5 more common RFK Jr. fallacies. Excerpts edited by residents against with smoke emission particulates. The 501c3 nonprofit organization, your local epidemiologist newsletter, April 29, 2026. Keeping up with public health developments, both policy and health events, is like drinking from a fire hose these days. 5 more logical fallacies in the era of RFK Junior Common rhetorical tricks that are used to spread false health information. Last month, I wrote about 5 logical fallacies that are trending right now in the world of health, and there was a resounding request for round 2. So here you have it. But first, why should you care? Learning to identify logical fallacies is a form of pre-bunking. There are so many false health claims on the internet, and chasing them down one by one is not possible. Instead, if you can learn to recognize these common errors in reasoning and manipulative patterns, you can be prepared to discern unreliable information when you encounter it in the wild, and research has shown pre-bunking works. Teaching people logical fallacies helps them discern what information is reliable and what is not. Alright, now to the fallacies. 1. Anecdotal fallacy. The anecdotal fallacy occurs when people use their limited personal experience to make sweeping conclusions. Our personal experiences are important, and they guide many of our decisions, but they also often give us incomplete information because they only reflect one experience or point of view. The error in reasoning occurs when a person assumes their limited experience provides complete information and is enough to make much broader conclusions. Examples of this fallacy in action: my child did not get vaccinated, and they are fine. Anecdote: vaccines are not really needed. Broader conclusion: I stopped eating bread and felt better. Anecdote: gluten is causing so much inflammation in the modern diet. Broader conclusion: I started taking this new supplement and have so much energy. Anecdote: it really works. Broader conclusion. 2. Appeal to emotion fallacy. The appeal to emotion fallacy tries to win an argument not by providing evidence, but by distracting people with strong emotionally charged language or imagery to evoke feelings such as fear, anger, or sadness. The image below is a great example. It was used to try to convince Americans that children in the U.S. received too many vaccines instead of providing accurate data. The image triggers an emotional reaction by using images of lots of needles, which feels scary, and by showing the U.S. baby as unhappy, frowning. This emotionally charged imagery distracts people from the fact that the message is inaccurate. U.S. babies do not receive 72 injections, and the image creates a distorted view of immunization by emphasizing fear of needles, while ignoring the benefits. Emotion by itself is not inherently wrong or invalid, and it can be used appropriately. In health messaging, the error in reasoning occurs when emotion is used in place of a reasoned argument, or when it is used to distract from the fact that insufficient or inaccurate evidence has been provided, as was the case here. 3. Appeal to authority. The appeal to authority fallacy says that authority figures, experts, are always right, but this is not always true. Reality does not bend to the will or whims of experts. Right now, I think this one is especially confusing because the scientific community says trust the experts, but then when an expert says something a bit weird, they say ignore them. In science, what ultimately matters is the quality of the data and analysis, not who is making the claim. Experts are often more reliable because they are trained to evaluate evidence, which is why it usually makes sense to trust them, but their credentials alone are not proof. People with MDs and PhDs have to provide data to back up what they are saying. The error in reasoning comes from assuming that the title or credentials alone of a person are enough to say they are correct without requiring they provide additional evidence to support their argument. Examples of this fallacy in action: Dr. Malone is the inventor of mRNA vaccines. He knows what he is talking about. I have seen 5 doctors online recommend this supplement. It must work. A Harvard study showed Tylenol during pregnancy is linked to autism. It must be true. The appeal to authority fallacy in action. For the moving the goalpost fallacy occurs when someone refuses to accept valid evidence supporting an argument and instead changes their demands. This tactic makes it so an argument is never settled because the demands are constantly changing. One of the most famous examples of this fallacy is the rumor around vaccines and autism. Back in the 1990s, the original argument was the MMR vaccine may be linked to autism. This was studied extensively and no link was found, but instead of saying, "Oh, that is great," the goalposts changed and the rumor lived on. Next, it was alleged it was actually thimerosal, a vaccine ingredient that was causing autism. When studies found no link between thimerosal and autism, the demands shifted again. This has happened over and over again for the last 3 decades, turning what was once a valid hypothesis into an unfalsifiable rumor that is designed to never die when moving the goalposts is used. No amount of data is ever deemed enough. See this video on YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook. 5. The straw man fallacy occurs when someone misrepresents an argument to make it easier to attack. Instead of engaging with what was actually said, they oversimplify or exaggerate it, making it sound more extreme or simplistic than it really is. This fake version, the straw man, is easier to knock down, creating the illusion of winning the argument, but in reality, the original point was never addressed. Examples of this fallacy in action: you said vaccines are safe, but clearly they have side effects. Real claim safe means the benefits of vaccines outweigh the risks and serious side effects are very rare. Straw man version safe means no risks of any side effects whatsoever. Doctors just want you to take a pill for everything. Real claim chronic health conditions are complex, and sometimes diet and exercise alone are the best approach, while other times medications may be needed. Straw man version: doctors just want to push pills for conditions that are really caused by poor diet and Lack of exercise communication tips for talking about fallacies pre-bunking by teaching these logical fallacies can be an effective strategy for helping people recognize unreliable health information. Here are a few communication tips to keep in mind when sharing these with your communities. The goal is not to make people feel stupid. Everyone uses and falls for these fallacies from time to time, and they are not a sign of lack of intelligence. The goal is to empower people to identify and resist manipulation tactics, not to make them feel stupid. In general, shame-based messaging does not work, and it will not work here. Do not just name the fallacy, explain the reasoning. Error. Naming the fallacy alone likely will not help. The goal is to help people understand for themselves why the reasoning does not hold up, so they can be equipped to identify the flaw in the future. Provide real-world examples when possible. Hypothetical examples can be useful, but real-world examples help people see and understand these manipulation tactics in the wild, setting them up to identify them in the future. 3 United States, Washington, D.C. fake assassination attempt theories. Excerpts edited by residents against would smoke emission particulates. The 501c3 nonprofit organization, the Ballroom Truthers, have a theory. The Atlantic, April 29, 2026. The fake assassination attempt conspiracy keeps growing. The conspiracy theorists also latched on to a video pulled from Fox News' live broadcast, in which the reporter, Aisha Hasni, calling from inside the Hilton Hotel that hosted the event, told the anchor that she had been speaking with the husband of Caroline Levitt right before the shooting started. "You need to be very safe," she said. He had told her, and he was very serious when he said that to me, and he kind of looked around the room, and he said there are some. Then the call dropped. Hasni clarified in a post on X that cell service had been spotty in the ballroom, but her explanation delivered at 1:30 a.m. in the morning was not as widely viewed as posts suggesting that Fox had cut her feed before she could reveal what her source had gone on to say. "There are some people in here who are going to fake an attempt on the life of the president, but with live ammunition." Within hours of the gunfire at the White House dinner for correspondents on Saturday night, and initial erroneous reports that the shooter had been killed, the usual swirl of misinformation and rumor was swirling in a particular direction. The event was staged. People said more than 300,000 posts containing the word staged were shared on X before midday on Sunday. Some of those were probably saying that actually the event was not staged, but still people with substantial social media followings, including some celebrities, were raising questions. They drew attention to a clip of White House Press Secretary Caroline Levitt from just before the dinner laughing as she previewed the speech of her boss. "There will be some shots fired tonight in the room." Others in the style of pop music stan or follower accounts grabbed photos of President Trump and other members of the administration taken just before the shooting, in which one might find evidence of knowing smirks or other telling body language. Some of these posts were viewed millions of times. For New York City, Miranda Priestley hangs up her own coat. Now New York City, interpreted by Hollywood. The Devil Wears Prada 2 finds the magazine industry in a much less glamorous place. Excerpts edited by residents against would smoke emission particulates. The 501c3 nonprofit organization, The Atlantic, April 29, 2026. The Devil Wears Prada took place amid the glorious roar of capitalism. The hit 2006 comedy took place in a world where magazines were still triumphant. With Runway, a fictional Vogue-esque publication, the film was centered on sitting firmly atop the heap. The only concern was whether Andy Sachs, a plucky aspiring journalist played by Anne Hathaway, could survive working as the assistant to the imperious editor-in-chief of Runway, named Miranda Priestley, played by Meryl Streep, without totally losing her sense of self in The Devil Wears Prada 2. At first, the story is a bit of a retread. 20 years later, Runway still exists and Miranda still rules it with a relatively iron fist, but the budgets of the magazine are no longer limitless. The September issue is not quite as thick with glossy ads. Dreaded words such as content and traffic are bandied about during meetings that used to be focused on which past appetizers would be served at an upcoming gala. Stanley Tucci returns as the right-hand man of Miranda Nigel Kipling. So too does Emily Blunt. She plays the former rival of and colleague of Andy, named Emily Charlton. What is emphasized here are lots of spiky friendships and mild work drama, and very little romantic turmoil. 5 United States, the Midwest, the lost idealism of heartland rock. The genre of Bob Seger and John Mellencamp reached across the ideological spectrum in a way that seems unimaginable today. Excerpts edited by residents against would smoke emission particulates. The 501c3 nonprofit organization, The Atlantic, April 28, 2026. What was heartland rock? In the 1980s, the phrase denoted an array of artists and tendencies, while also conjuring something atmospheric. Everything about the sound was big: the guitars, the drums, the voices. The chorus is tailor-made to be shouted along to at a stadium, or at a wedding, or in your car nowadays, probably to the embarrassment of your kids, or maybe grandkids. The bigness is in the soaring refrain of the Tom Petty 1989 classic Free Falling. Heartland rock had a big heart too. It was concerned with the lives of everyday people, building worlds so vivid that listeners effortlessly recognized themselves in them. The dominant mood was obsessive nostalgia. A remarkable amount of the music consists of grown men singing about teenagers tugging on the heartstrings. Can be a cheap trick in the hands of the wrong songwriter, but the best songs of the genre are redeemed by a fastidious eye and a poetic ear. In the Bruce Springsteen Born to Run lovers, like fast cars, are sprung from cages on Highway 9. United Kingdom men accused in fires targeting Starmer received orders, and Russian prosecutors say 2 buildings and a car linked to Prime Minister Keir Starmer of Britain were set afire in May 2025. The men on trial for it were recruited through a Russian-language telegram account, a jury was told. 6A Ukraine, how to help Ukraine in the Ukraine Daily Newsletter. Excerpts edited by residents against would smoke emission particulates. The 501c3 nonprofit organization, Kyiv Independent, April 29, 2026. How to help Ukraine behind blue eyes and helping children affected by war. Access creative outlets. We launched the How to Help Ukraine newsletter for our members last year because we heard from you that there is interest in getting more involved in helping Ukraine. In the 10th edition of How to Help Ukraine, we are proud to share with you the work of Behind Blue Eyes, a project dedicated to giving children from frontline and liberated areas creative outlets, from film photography to sound recording, so they can both discover their talents and have a chance to speak about their experiences during the war of aggression by Russia. Behind Blue Eyes is currently raising money for expeditions to frontline areas. This Summer and fall 7-day trip to the south or east of Ukraine costs between $8,000 to $18,000, depending on the exact location, the focus of the expedition, and the number of participants. This figure includes the transportation, accommodation, and meals for a team of 8 to 9 people, as well as all the necessary creative materials for about 100 children to participate in some way, including disposable film cameras, printed materials, gifts for the children, and photo and video production during each expedition. Behind Blue Eyes make sure that the children have everything they need to immerse themselves in the creative process, trying out different creative mediums and formats. For context, one disposable film camera is about $25. The idea for Behind Blue Eyes began in spring 2022 by Dima Zubkov and Artem Skorokodko, while the two were delivering humanitarian aid to Lukashivka, a village in Chernihiv Oblast that was occupied for about a month at the very beginning of the Russian full-scale invasion. In conversations with the locals, one of the things that stood out the most to Dima and Artem was how the children continued to view the world with sincerity and a faith in the future despite the horrors of living through occupation. Along with delivering humanitarian aid, Dima and Artem also brought the children disposable film cameras, letting them photograph whatever they wanted to. Remember, without any supervision or intervention. Pictured here are 3 of the photos taken by children during this period. Dima and Artem shared the photos on social media, starting a small community that supported the children, which then grew into a mission to provide creative outlets to children from frontline and liberated areas. The goal is to let the children discover and develop their artistic talents and to give them an opportunity to speak about their lives experiences and dreams during the war. Behind Blue Eyes currently has a team of 9 people. Last year, the founders Dima and Artem joined the Ukrainian army. Since the project started in 2022, here is what it has accomplished. Met with over 1,500 children, 650 of whom got involved in an artistic project, including film photography, sound recording, cinematography, and upcycling. Carried out over 30 expeditions to frontline and liberated villages, giving children the materials to document their lives on film. Organized 3 of their BLYCHYK Spark and Ukrainian creativity festivals in frontline villages, hosting film workshops and showcasing the artwork of children. Created a podcast with a reach of over 2 million listeners, interviewing children about their everyday experiences and their dreams. The podcast is only available in Ukrainian, but the YouTube channel of the project also features some videos with English subtitles, like this documentary showing the behind-the-scenes challenges of organizing a festival for children in a frontline village. Behind Blue Eyes aims to start a new chapter in 2026, turning the week-long expeditions into a long-term educational program aimed at nurturing creativity and giving children who have experienced war a way to process their reality and build resilience. You can help Behind Blue Eyes by making a donation to help fund their expeditions this summer and fall. Each trip to the frontline costs between $8,000 and $18,000 and helps the project bring creative materials to children who have experienced war so that they can express themselves through art and have space to speak about their lives during war. Behind Blue Eyes works with local volunteer organizations and schools, ensuring they visit villages where their presence will have the biggest impact. Finally, Behind Blue Eyes is also working on displaying the photography and videography of children in exhibitions abroad. 6B Ukraine, one story from Ukraine. Excerpts edited by residents against with smoke emission particulates. The 501c3 nonprofit organization Kyiv Independent, April 29, 2026. Offensive tactics of Russia on full display in fight for Sloviansk. Note from the editor: in accordance with the security protocols of the Ukrainian military, soldiers featured in this story are identified by first name and call sign only. Donetsk Oblast. The Russians have the task of starting the occupation of Sloviansk in the summer. The words of Dmitro: life shall come without drama, panic, or mockery, but on the cusp of what could be one of the most decisive summer campaigns in one of the most important sectors of the front line in the far eastern Donbass region of Ukraine. The tone struck was always going to be foreboding, traipsing through the gray, foggy landscape of a spring morning in the hills east of Sloviansk. The 44-year-old head of artillery reconnaissance of the Ukraine 10th Mountain Assault Brigade does the rounds of the newly relocated artillery positions of his unit. Over the past 2 nights, the huge metal beasts of war, some over half a century old, had moved into these hills, hunkering down in the black earth and camouflaged with nets and branches in the basements and dugouts dotted around the area. Ukrainian soldiers from his unit drink coffee and rest after sleepless nights, changing position under fire. You always feel like something could happen here, said artilleryman Seaman Sega, resting after a tense overnight relocation of their howitzer. When we first got here, it was still okay, but where we were before, where we left last night, it was really bad. We could not even go to the bathroom for an hour because a drone was just hanging there. Ever since the culmination of the bloody Battle of Bakhmut over 3 years ago, the 10th Brigade has held the line here, guarding the approach to the northernmost of the now famous fortress belt of Donbass cities in Ukraine, named Sloviansk. For a long time, despite the best efforts of Russia to break through the defense of this sector, was one of the most stable in Donetsk Oblast. But over winter, with a renewed Russian push quickly overrunning the city of Siversk, Ukrainian brigades in the area have been forced to pull back now, with Russian first-person view FPV drones reaching Sloviansk for the first time. An intense summer campaign ahead. The soldiers of the brigade are bracing themselves for what could be one of their toughest fights so far. The objective of Russia here is like their aim to take Kyiv in 3 days in 2022, said Dmitro. They set these kinds of goals for themselves, and our job is to stop them from carrying it out. We are doing that job. Webisode 57DHYAFZZFLWEO. January 11th, 2026. Congress is racing to undo thousands of cuts to federal science programs. Cartoon 1 of 5. Congress is racing to undo thousands of cuts to federal science programs. Cell 1. The current government bid for an overall cut in scientific funding to $154 billion from $198 billion would be a plunge of 22%. Cell 2. This week, the Senate Appropriations Committee released a bipartisan package of bills. Cell 3 that largely scraps the current government planned cuts to federal science programs. Cell 4 Congress will set aside roughly $188 billion for federal research. Cartoon 2 of 5 Congress is racing to undo thousands of cuts to federal science programs. Cell 1 $188 billion for federal research will only be a drop of 4%. Cell 2 this rejects the current government push to let our competitors do laps around us. Cell 3 last year the current government administration called for a cut in federal basic research of more than 1/3. Cell for the current government sought even larger cuts for the National Science Foundation, which sponsors much of the nation's basic research. Cartoon 3 of 5 Congress is racing to undo thousands of cuts to federal science programs. Cell 1 the current government proposed that the National Science Foundation NSF budget be slashed to $3.9 billion. Cell 2 from $8.8 billion a drop of 56%. Cell 3 the Senate package countered with a reduction to $8.75 billion. Cell 4 or less than 1%. Cartoon 4 of 5 Congress is racing to undo thousands of cuts to federal science programs. Cell 1 the Senate package includes $24.4 billion for NASA, a 1.6% cut. Cell 2 $8.8 billion for the Environmental Protection Agency EPA, a 4% cut. Cell 3 $8.4 billion for the Department of Energy Office of Science, a 1.9% increase. Cell 4 $6.2 billion for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, roughly flat. Cartoon 5 of 5 Congress is racing to undo thousands of cuts to federal science programs. Cell 1 the Senate and the House are now not far apart for negotiations on a final budget. Cell 2 the House's moves on 2026 science budgeting add up to $185 billion, which is close to the Senate figure of $188 billion. Cell 3 but this cannot undo the damage that the current government administration frenzy of budget cutting and administrative chaos. Cell 4 brought to the nation's scientific establishment.
Webisode 57DHYAFZZFLWEO January 11, 2025 If science funds are restored then fund alternatives to wood burning. Cartoon 1 of 5 If science funds are restored, then fund alternatives to wood burning. Cell 1 fund heat pumps that work down to 40 degrees below zero and also act as air conditioners. Cell 2 fund extending a smart electric grid everywhere, including all rural areas. Cell 3 fund wind and solar energy sources that produce electricity sent to the smart grid. Cell 4 fund batteries that store the electricity produced by wind and solar long-term for use in emergencies. Cartoon 2 of 5 If science funds are restored then cut dirty energy that is now funded. Cell 1 cut funds for biofuels such as wood stoves and wood burning for home heating. Cell 2 cut funds for biofuels such as corn-based ethanol for automobile fuel. Cell 3 cut funds for wood and other biofuels used to replace coal burning in industrial plants. Cell 4 cut funds for fossil fuels as well as cut funds for biofuels. Cartoon 3 of 5 If science funds are restored enact regulations that fund removal of indoor residential wood burning appliances. Cell 1 fund resident-owned Purple Air PM 2.5 monitors. Cell 2 given free to any near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner. Cell 3 whose wood burning PM 2.5 emissions enter the yard of the near neighbor and sicken them. Cell 4 use the data downloadable from the Purple Air map as evidence to shut down each indoor residential wood burning appliance one appliance at a time if necessary. Cartoon 4 of 5 If science funds are restored enact regulations that make electric vehicles and public transport affordable. Cell 1 reinstate rebates for electric vehicles. Cell 2 fund high-speed electric transport that will be low cost to all. Cell 3 enact fuel regulations to discourage production of gas-powered vehicles. Cell 4 fund research that makes production of electric vehicles efficient and cost-effective. Cartoon 5 of 5 If science funds are restored enact regulations that make home heating and transport by electric vehicle affordable. Cell 1 do not allow subsidies for luxury electric vehicles. Cell 2 do not allow subsidies for home heating for individuals making over a certain salary. Cell 3 tax the rich to provide clean energy subsidies for the middle income and poor. Cell 4. Keep in mind that the Energy Department and the EPA should work to stop air pollution that harms human health as well as slow climate change.
Webisode 57DHYAFZZFLWEO January 4, 2026 Would smoke affect the family adversely? Cartoon 1 of 2 Cell 1 When you know you are not protecting your family well enough. When you replace air filters and air purifiers every month instead of every 6 months. Just do not burn wood indoors residentially to begin with. Cell 2 When you are scared whenever someone opens a window. Just do not burn wood indoors residentially to begin with. Cartoon 2 of 2 Cell 1 It gives me no great joy to say this. Smog towers do not work. Cell 2 Carbon capture does not work. Just do not burn wood industrially in place of coal to begin with.
Red-green fox here. The quick red-green fox jumped over the barriers to clean air. Red-green fox here. Ready to sing to you the names of the 2025 major wood-burning biomass industry subsidy opponents. 1. Biofuel Watch. 2. Bulkley Valley Stewardship Coalition of British Columbia, Canada. 3. Comite Lucht, which means Beautiful Air Committee in German. 4. Dogwood Alliance. 5. Equity Group Foundation, nicknamed EGF. 6. Environmental Paper Network, nicknamed EPN. 7. Natural Resources Defense Council, nicknamed NRDC. 8. Prakaunia Narzexwisistik Istit, which means Workshop for All Beings in Polish. 9. Rachel Carson Council. 10 Solutions for Our Climate, nicknamed SFOC.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. RFK. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove. International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RFK. Purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.